about like nutrient uptake and kind of the process of how that works.
So with these synthetics that people are feeding, as we've talked about in the past and what we're getting into currently, your soil system's not built the same whenever it has to uptake one versus the other. So with organics, you are building an ecosystem, whether you can see it or not. You're building like almost a stomach of digestion under the soil. You know, you want it to be able to uptake what you provide for it non-synthetically and the things around it. So when you have these synthetics, it's not so much like a soil focus. It's only giving and seeing what's received. Like you see your plants, the big uptake, but what's actually happening down below the surface, it's not healthy and it's not doing it the same. You know, the process is completely different. Yeah.
On steroids.
Yeah, it's one guy that looks really beefed up and looks like he's doing a lot for his body, but he's eating like crap. And there's one guy who's doing it naturally in the right way, and he's full of the good proteins, and he's going to look good forever. You know, it's kind of the differences.
Yeah. And when we say living soil is regenerative, what we mean is basically if you're growing without it with using the synthetics, you're gonna have to keep buying new products all the time. You're gonna have to keep buying those bottled nutrients, and also the grow medium, the cocoa core or the rock wool cubes, whatever you're growing in, and those have to be disposed of after you use them. You can reuse cocoa core, but you have to buffer it and do a lot to it.
Amend a lot,
to make it usable again. And the nutrients that you're putting in, that just creates a lot of runoff. And just because you're putting the nutrients in the soil or in the cocoa core, it doesn't necessarily always mean that the plant is taking up all of that. So a lot of that goes to runoff. With organics, a lot of the nutrients is readily available for the plant to choose what it needs. It's like a buffet of what it can pick and choose what it needs in the moment.
Because it's kind of living in there.
Right.
Exactly.
Like synthetics is precision farming, so people are measuring out what the plant needs and giving it to it. With organics, it's not precision farming in the way of we are directly giving it the nitrates, potassium, all of the different nutrients. The whole system is kind of like a buffet for the plant to say, I'm lacking in this area, it's over here.
Let me pull some of this. Pull some of this at the time it needs it. Not exactly when we pick and choose to feed it. Exactly.
So, and there's ways to make organic fertilizers that will limit your cost and save you money in the long run. That's why it's more of a cost up front, because it's a regenerative system. So we take our cuttings, our plant matter that would just go to waste essentially, and they're biodegradable. We put them in a compost bin or a worm bin, and we're able to turn those things back into nutrients and recycle it to the plant. And so that's kind of the difference in the nutrient uptake for both of those things.
So what if we were growing completely synthetics and did trimming? Like, I don't know, do you even do that? Do you defoliate?
Yeah, so they defoliate the same.
And then what do they do with that? Will that ever feed again?
No. So whatever's cut off is, in a synthetic grow, it's just loss. For us,
it's trash.
It is loss of the plant weight. Yes, so to say. Oftentimes we think we take a cutting, it provides more for somewhere else, but you are losing, the initial mass. With the way we farm, it gets put back in, whether it's directly into the bed, just chop and drop, like Kara said, into a worm bin or our compost pile outside. It's getting reused in a system where it's not organic. You don't have the ability, you cannot put leaves into a tray with no soil. Now you're spreading disease because those will get mold and it's going to fry. There's no way for it to even start to break down. Like there's no microbes there to begin that life. It's just not even.
Yeah, that's what
it's not possible.
Since it's
so
sterile.
Like if you tried to put a bunch of those leaves in a bucket.
If you're not having,
nothing would really happen.
Gonna happen.
Yeah, those leaves in a sealed bucket, or they're gonna mold with just their regular residue and things that are in the air. It will. Things will happen to it, but your microbes aren't breaking it down. It's not becoming anything, nutrient available. Your worms aren't breaking it down.
Right.
Nothing actually degrades, biodegradable. That's not happening at all. It's just sitting.
There's good and bad forms of these microbes. And so if you're not intentionally putting the good ones into your grow medium, if you just have cocoa core and you put leaves on top, the good guys aren't in there to help decay that. There can be pathogenic fungi growing on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what Seb was saying.
Yeah.
And like we have springtails, which is something you can visibly see. It's a bug you can
Barely.
look at. I mean, they're really small, but they're visible to our eyes. They're not micro. And so those guys, they actually eat pathogenic fungi. Mm-hmm. And if we have any of that, it's getting digested by the good bugs that are in our soil. Same with rove beetles. There's a plethora of organisms that are working, and it's
the visitor.
It's almost like instead of trying to abolish nature and say we need this completely sterile, we have a symbiotic relationship with nature, and we recognize that there's good things that can be beneficial and help eliminate the disease without being completely sterile.
Yeah, exactly. We're using what we have to start the process earlier and to complete it itself.
So this is kind of going to sound like more basic or more 101, but one big point is that organic nutrients, a lot of what it comes from is poop and dead things. That's pretty gross, right? But if you look at...
Scientifically, it's everything. It's life.
Yeah,
look at the periodic table.
Life. Yeah.
Everything comes from Earth. And so where does soil come from? It comes from when in fall the leaves fall down onto the grass, and over time, if you let them pile up, years later, if you go start digging through that, it's going to be all wet under there, and it's going to be turning into soil, breaking down. Everything breaks down and turns into the essential elements in the periodic table. Carbon. We're all made of that stuff too. One day we're going to become soil,
Exactly.
And
unless they pump us full of chemicals.
Right. We've kind of been taught that these things are gross, and they're pretty gross. Some things don't smell that great. Some things are kind of gross and sick to look at. But honestly,
some of the what is the concoction that Steven's
fermentation.
Some
he's
KNF.
fermenting some stuff.
Yeah,
My dad.
The decay, the smell of decay.
Yeah, some Korean natural farming inputs can be a little stinky,
right?
For sure.
But we just gotta get used to that.
Yeah.
It's healthy for the plants, which in turn is healthy for us.
Yeah.
It's natural.
There's
it's a natural process.
Anaerobic ponds and puddles in the woods. There's trees falling down, leaves on the ground, stuff that gets covered up. Things die all the time. The soil takes over, and that's what creates the life. So and the best way to replicate that, that's what we're trying to do.
Recycle. Mm-hmm. So when the plants in the environment, in the system, when they die and are allowed to decay, the nutrients that they retained while they were alive is immobilized or not able to be taken up.
Paralyzed up in there.
Yeah, it's locked up in a way that the other plants, they can't just absorb the nutrients from that dead plant. So the fungi and the bacteria, they are kind of the first to get to it, and they start breaking it down, and the nutrients is still immobilized in those organisms. And then the nematodes and the bigger microorganisms start feeding on that, and it's released in their waste as a readily available nutrient. It becomes mineralized, which means able to be taken up by the plant. Mm-hmm. So after that process, that they're then able to take up the nutrients that was locked up in the dead plant. So that's kind of a more sciencey explanation of me saying that nutrients comes from dead things.
Yeah, and this is why regenerative agriculture works in living soil, because your soil, this process is happening, and when you plant the next plant there, it does plug in and uptake those nutrients because you have these things in there already working and doing this process. You're not the one activating that. You're not feeding the nutrients for it to take up. It's got these microorganisms inside the soil. So as soon as you put the new plant in there, they begin working on that, and the trade-off happens like that instead of, a brand new process, a brand new feeding, a brand new system and everything. It's
Right.
That's how it works.
So we're kind of trying to build a system of diverse microorganisms within the soil so that they can get a plethora of different nutrients, because all these different microorganisms do different things within the soil. So it's good to have a good variety of those guys. And it's kind of like the balance between good and evil, the yin yang. There's going to be some bad guys in there, but they're food for the good guys, and we're trying to keep that, walk on that line in between the yin yang.
Yeah.
So we're trying to create that environment with all those different microorganisms, and they need moisture to live. So eventually we want to get to a place where we're just providing them water and it's sustaining itself with the chop and drop, cutting a limb and dropping
what it's
it.
Doing and
Yeah. A lot of living soil is intuitive farming. So you go outside, you walk around the woods, you walk around your yard, your field, and you're thinking about growing plants. Just look at what's going on. Think about your own intuition and what maybe you could come up with that seems natural and seems like it would be happening, outside, because oftentimes intuitive farming is the way, and it unlocks things even when you can't understand it on the biological and chemical perspective. The things are happening that work the right way just because you see it happen outside.
Yeah.
So we want to give you guys the why of why we're doing this, and maybe in some future videos we're going to start doing some how-tos, how to make worm tea, how to, just telling you guys, if you're a synthetic grower or you don't grow at all and you want to start trying to learn about organic farming, we want you guys to be able to do that and have access to that kind of information.
Yeah,
and so we'd be happy to provide you with that, if not give you the sources of where we learned it.
Yeah.
A lot of our information has come from Future Cannabis Project, and their videos on there. They have some really good information and places you can watch their videos, and it can hopefully lead you down a rabbit hole of other sources, kind of like it did with us.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get into it more.
Well, I think that's all we have to talk about for today. Please give us a follow if you don't mind, and like and share and spread the good news of the soil health with anyone who you think might be interested. Thanks so much for watching.
Peace out.